call the meeting to order. Okay, Mike, can you take roll?
Absolutely. Mr. Bedford. Here. Ms. Hope.
Here.
Ms. Paoli.
Here.
Mr. Sangillo. Mr. Seidel.
Here.
Mr. Vecchio.
Here.
Vice President Hogartle.
Here.
President Crooked.
Here. Okay, for the pledge.
To the States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mike, can you read the statement concerning open public meetings?
Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the Superintendent of Schools in the following manner. On January 15th, 2021, notice of this meeting was posted on the interior of the school administration offices, 1 Lincoln Avenue, Haddonfield. Written notice was submitted and filed with the Haddonfield Borough Clerk, and notices were faxed to the Courier Post and mailed to the Retrospect newspaper.
Okay, no presentations
No
today, right?
presentation.
Okay, so we go right into committee reports. The curriculum committee, which is me, so I'll go. We had a curriculum meeting on the 14th. We talked about the math committee. The math committee, we're doing similar to how we did the social studies committee last year, which is a large group full of the faculty, administrators, community members. It's great. I'm on it, so I got an opportunity to really see it in action. Dr. Murray's doing a great job organizing everyone. We have a lot of expertise in the community of people helping. So that was great. We had our first full meeting this month, and we're talking about actively recruiting diverse students to sit on the committee as well, so that you have students who maybe have IEPs or who have different math levels of interest, different math goals, so that they have an opportunity to weigh in on the committee. We talked about the PSAT schedule. With this year, freshmen are included in that. And so we're talking about a half day for the PSAT administration and possible passion projects for the seniors. So, which is something I believe they We talked about the high school concentration of studies, which gives students an opportunity to pursue a course of study that focuses on an area of interest. Some ideas were, and it's in place now, but we're talking about expanding it more and also publicizing it more, so people are aware of the opportunity early on in the choice and choosing their course of study. Some of the concentrations are legal studies, allied health, engineering. And you'll hear more about that because that's going to be advertised a little more. And then we had professional development. We had back to school. There is professional development going into the school year, as well as the new teacher orientation, which was, Linda and I were there in the morning when they came in, and it was really great. It was exciting. It was a very positive experience. I think it was a great way. I want to thank all the administrators and all the staff and faculty who helped welcome the new teachers, because and I think there were other, not just teachers, like there were nurses and other people in the community or in the faculty that were there. So it was a really great opportunity for them to see what Haddonfield is and what a great district we have. And we talked a little bit about scheduling for professional development and the time to give more pauses and breaks during professional development days to give teachers a chance to process everything that they're learning. And so there's not that overload, there's more downloading time for them. Any questions?
I'm curious, and I'm not at all challenging it. I just want to understand, what was the rationale? Why are we including ninth graders in the PSAT this year? Just so I can articulate it.
You can.
That was always the intention, and then COVID came, we couldn't do it because of spacing. But it's to have more students have opportunity to test more frequently.
Just like practicing.
And you also get data from the PSAT, and the sooner that you get that, those students who want to prepare earlier for the SAT, they have that data that they can, kind of see where, where they should focus.
If I could interject also, Dan Licata has taken a lot of time to upload that data onto Linkit for the first time, so it's kind of a learning experience, but this delayed opening, it's going to be used during the data analysis. So as Jamie pointed out, it's a lot of data for teachers to be able to get a different type of perspective on students.
For the concentration of studies, the parent night, when all, right before course selection, when the parents come, they learn, what needs to stack up in order to get to where the kids want to be the senior year. Will you guys have representatives there explaining that?
We're gonna work on having a presentation, so that might, that's what might start at 7, maybe put something at 6:30, so I'm already working, that's when Cal, we should have something in place. And I think one of the goals is to open it up beyond just whatever field you have an interest in, so media or whatever the case may be.
That's great.
Justin, do you have a finance facilities meeting?
We did not meet since the last meeting. I think our next meeting is on Tuesday, right? The 28th.
Okay.
So an update after that meeting.
Lynn, how about policy?
Yep, policy committee met last Friday, and we discussed the items on this month's agenda for first reading, including 3 policies to be abolished. Policy 1648, the restart and recovery plan, and then 2 associated policies that dealt with remote instructions for students. These were developed and adopted last year as part of the roadmap plan that the New Jersey Department of Ed put forth for guidance for reopening during the pandemic, and that plan is no longer applicable, so we need to abolish those policies. Then we discussed 2 mandatory policies that are on the agenda this month for first reading. Policy 1648.11, looking forward, this replaces the roadmap.
Yes, for real, I love it.
So it outlines Haddonfield's plan for full day, full-time, in-person instruction in light of recent guidance from the New Jersey Department of Ed and New Jersey Department of Health. And this road forward provides a range of recommendations to consider, but also includes 2 mandatory orders, which of course we will follow. Those are the mask mandate and the staff vaccination or weekly testing mandate. And there are appendices attached that addressed a wide variety of things like physical distancing, transportation, meals, contact tracing, and those will likely be updated frequently as circumstances change. The other new policy, companion policy, is 1648.13, and this relates to the school employee vaccination and testing requirements. It's mandated and it incorporates protocols developed by the district. So those are on for first reading. Then we briefly reviewed the items on for second reading. The dress and grooming policy, just briefly, this simplified the policy and added the specifics to the regulation. It's gender neutral and is aligned with practices and student handbooks. And then policy 0131 regarding our bylaws, regulations, and policies. This really came up because of the option to abolish a policy or regulation or bylaw in meeting, but we agreed that it's important to stick to our current practice of having 2 readings. And then policy 2421, career and technical education. We wanted to, this wasn't in our policy book, so we wanted to add it to our manual, as we typically have 1 or 2 students each year who attend. And then finally, we reviewed 6 existing policies and agreed to hold 3 of them for further discussion and a potential first reading next month. Those are all are regarding board issues. So board self-evaluation, board committees, and board superintendent relations. As we are soon to have many new board members, we thought it was a good time to take a closer look at these, make sure they're properly implemented, and update if we.
Okay, any PTA or ATT updates?
So I went to the HET or tuned in to the AGT meeting last Thursday. They discussed several things. First, the beautification project is wrapping up with the completion of the Sarah Tarditi Gallagher garden. That's expected to be done in early October.
So I hope, yes.
So that's exciting, and fundraising has now shifted to the auditorium improvement fund. You know, Dave mentioned the golf outing last month was really successful in June. The next big fundraising event is the Haddonfield Big Bash Barbecue, formerly known as Big Roast. And that will be held on October 16th from 6:30 to 10 at Rayanne and Jeff Puff's house. And they wanted to stress that everyone is welcome. This is not just a Haddonfield alumni event. And then I was given permission to share some really exciting news about a generous donation. So Haddonfield Childcare, which we all know is a long-term provider of childcare services in town, when they closed last year through a distribution of their assets, they very generously donated $160,000
Wow.
to the HET.
Wow.
So there is a smaller donation that's expected in the future when they're fully dissolved, but this is obviously an amazing start to the Auditorium Improvement Fund project. And of course, we're so grateful to the HCC for all their years of service to the town. It's really generous, hugely generous.
Okay.
I love sharing.
Okay, Dr. Friolo, do you have anything for Assistant Superintendent?
I do not have anything tonight, thank you.
All right.
Share my
Well-
screen if I can figure out how to do this. Right, so just going to talk a couple quick things, public comments in our COVID numbers. I'm going to be a short one tonight. So the first piece is public comments, which has changed over the years in this district. It used to be often would become public debate and public question and answer, which is really not what it is. A public comment time is for citizens to make their opinion heard. It's not supposed to be a question and answer. It's not supposed to be an open debate. And since we've shifted to that in the last couple of years, there's been the accusation for lack of transparency. You know, this was an easy question. You should have answered this one, not answered that one. It's not a lack of transparency. It is a matter of that's what this is supposed to be. And if we as a board, or if I as a superintendent, were to pick and choose which answers to answer tonight and which not to answer, that's a lack of transparency, right? That's not the way things should be happening. And some of them seem very simple, like, why don't you take temperatures? The reason was because last year, and this is on the answer question, we took thousands of temperatures and sent no one away. It wasn't effective. But to answer that question and not answer what would happen if you violated the mandate by the government, which I didn't know the answer to, that's where you start getting into whether or not you're being equitable to this question. So that's the reason why we do it that way. I know it can be frustrating. We're not trying to hide anything. We're just trying to approach this with what it's meant to be. So what we do is I answer the questions. I email the people and answer questions afterwards the next day, and I copy the board and I put them out there. And now all of these are on our district website. So if you go to the board website, under the responses, and there says public meeting comment, everything questions I get, I answer, they're posted within a day or two. So I email the people back and they're posted. So if anyone has an interest in what the answer to that question was, or any questions we had, they'll be archived there. So this is a way for everyone to have access to the answer. So in the past, what I had done when I first started was I would answer back. Rachel, I'd send her an email and say, here's the answer to your question. Now, everyone who heard Rachel's question as an interest will be able to go and find the answer to that question. So that's how we're handling the public comments, and that's how we're approaching the way we're going to do that. Our COVID number updates, we have a couple things to talk about. So Central School, we had, as you saw, we had a preschool classroom was closed because of not COVID positive in the room, but a number of COVID symptomatic students who are waiting test results and a staff member who had been positive. So it's a combination of things. It's an overly cautious move, but given preschool, the proximity with each other and maybe not the best mask habits in the world, we figured that should be the best move to make it full precautionary. if the two students who were caught symptomatic, test negative, we should get the result back soon. Monday, class will be back in session. If not, the 30th, I believe, we're coming back. Will be the 30th. We are changing our close contact protocols. So we did a lot of, except for the vaccination testing for staff and the mask, we followed recommendations by the Department of Health and by the CDC. And we were going to, as long as people were masked safely within 3 feet, we were going to make people aware of close contact, but not exclude. Based on what we've seen in this last case with the one positive, all 4 of the close contacts identified displayed symptoms. We are going to go back to that practice of the quarantining because it becomes very scary, right? So we close the classroom, right? So what this is a constant game of adjusting, seeing, pushing, pulling, and those things, and it can be frustrating. But we believe now that that's where we're going. Additionally to that is you're going to see, we're also back in the high in the Cali score. So between some of these things, we are looking at having our classrooms, especially elementary, revert maybe back to what they looked like at the end of last year, more rows and aisles, as opposed to right now we have the clusters again. So as a reaction to some of these things happening, we're going to take the cautionary thing. I know it's not ideal. It's much better to be in the classrooms right now, but we're trying to watch all of those things. So the discussion today is if we were to leave today, I think it would be safe to say we'll probably be back to what it looked like last year, sooner rather than later, before we have another case where we get a little scare. So that's going to be something happening. If that happens, we will make them, the HSD Health will let the parents and the community know what we're doing there. Travel advisory. There is a recommended travel advisory. We are currently not following it. Last year, we had 418 students quarantined for travel, 0 were COVID positive. And the other example is, if you saw the pictures of the Fish concert in Atlantic City or for Ocean City Boardwalk, thousands of people without masks. But if you go camping in Maine, you have to stay home for 2 weeks. There's a disconnect there. So we are not doing that. That being said, people who are now listening, all the people listening right now at home, if it becomes mandated and you've made your vacation plans for the November PD week, if we have to, we will be enforcing the travel advisory if it comes to that. So that may be a change. The other question that we've gotten many of, the vaccination dashboard, where we have the percentages of students vaccinated. Where do we get that? It's the New Jersey, help me, Gino.
Immunization information.
Integrated system. We have that database we've access to. We got this before COVID. We used it for our other immunizations. No one except for the nurses can see who has what, but they can give us the percentages. That's where that comes from. So we're not prying into any personal records or doing those things. We're getting it from our nurses who have access to the information, and they're giving us numbers. They're not giving us names of anyone who's vaccinated. So there are COVID vaccines. Do you have a question?
Yeah, no, I just looked at literally tonight and I couldn't figure out how I got there and where I found it, but the quarantine protocol on the document, I believe, that Ms. Herrera created, it's fantastic, the decision.
The decision, correct.
So we'll just have to, in my mind, I thought we were approving that tonight, but I think that's different than what you just said. You
Right,
said
yeah.
to go back to quarantining. So we'll just have to
We'll go back to quarantine.
updating that document.
Yes.
then.
As I said, here's our new Cali score numbers. We have gone back up to high, which is orange. So that's actually just an awareness piece. And then
Just important to note that now that we go into orange,
change
it
the
does
quarantine.
impact practice and protocol where people can no longer test out of quarantine after 7 days. So it does impact some operations. It is listed on the decision tree that we're back into the orange, the high level, and our nurses tomorrow will update the appropriate protocols so parents can clearly see how that impacts operations now regarding quarantines and length of time people need to be on.
And just to confirm, it doesn't matter whether they're vaccinated or not, or proper mask wearing, which is in that document.
No, it doesn't, no, there are circumstances where, both vaccination and proper mask wearing are impacted. Particularly, where students now are going to be quarantined if they are a close contact and unvaccinated, and they're within 0 to 3 feet.
Right.
Last year was 6 feet. So in a situation, say in an elementary school where a student is unvaccinated and a close contact at 5 feet, if the individual student and the COVID positive person were correctly and properly wearing the mask the entire time, that student will not be required to be excluded from school. However, they will receive a notification from the school district as a proactive courtesy communication that, hey, you were within 5 feet, you don't need to quarantine, don't need to be excluded from school. However, we're providing you this information.
So can I just repeat, because I understood the paper to be exactly what you just said, but I thought Chuck said that we're changing it. So if you're
We were-
vaccinated and wearing your mask properly, you will not have to
We were not
quarantine, so let them know.
we were not quarantining people within 3 feet. That's the change. We are now, the 0 to 3 feet, we are quarantining unvaccinated.
Unvaccinated,
Correct.
not vaccinated. If
Correct.
you're vaccinated, it gives you, if people want to stay in school in person, there's, I don't know, a reason why being vaccinated is helpful in that line.
Correct, as of, or it might change in 48 hours.
But a document that could be collected, I was confused.
The notice of that change in status happened, what, Chuck, 5 hours ago?
About that, yeah.
This happens quickly. It takes us, half a day or so to adjust and update all of our documents.
So the short and shorter of it is, don't think you know, go read the decision tree,
Please.
current to the moment.
That is correct. We try to keep it up to date. Like if you go on it now, you'll see.
It says orange high.
Yeah, and it says under the exclusion, pending something. It indicates
Update
something.
pending.
Yeah,
Update
it's
pending.
pending, yeah.
That's that, yeah.
It's coming.
So that's what people really should know.
And not even check the decision tree, but just follow what the administrator
The
says.
decision tree is a great document. We always encourage our families to, if there are any questions or clarifications needed, our school nurses are really extraordinary and are there to answer your question. Or they can email me or.
That's it, yes.
Can I ask one more question? Sure. What's compliance with the Genesis daily check been like? People filling up the form?
I think it's been good. Good.
We haven't heard any of those, yes.
No, we certainly have our cases where we've had a couple of instances where we found some incongruent information. We followed accordingly.
Okay, for, President's report, I just want to briefly talk.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot one more thing.
No, go ahead.
So on your first comment, about publishing the answers to questions on the website, did you give any consideration to add them as an appendix to the minutes as well? So that the context, like a year or two from now?
I did not, but we should certainly do that.
Because it's not something that actually happened at the meeting, so as from a minute standpoint, I don't think it belongs in the voting section, but maybe just appended to it. And we'd approve it, and the approval would be just recognition that it was there or not,
Accepting it.
that we approved your
Accepting, not
answer.
approving.
Yeah, we're accepting, not approving. Sorry.
No problem. Okay, I just wanted to talk briefly about the 2 open seats we have on the board. There are 2 different terms. One is expired January 1st, 2020, or 2022. And the second is January 1st, 2023. They both will be filled by October 28th, 2021. The process changed a little bit from what we originally planned. Originally, we planned to hold 20 to 30-minute interviews for each candidate on September 25th. We had an overwhelming response from the community, which was great, and it's great to see so many people eager to get involved. But we have over 30 applicants, so interviewing all the candidates is no longer practical. So we moved to a different process where the candidates are going to be asked to respond to a series of questions, and the board will consider the responses their letters of interest, and their resume and CV. And we'll then select 5 to 7 candidates who we will interview in person at a public meeting on October the 7th. It'll be in the evening. And the new board members are going to be voted on and appointed on October the 14th. And they probably, though, won't be sworn in until the last meeting of October because they cannot be sworn in until all of their clearances come through, which might take a little longer. Anyone have any questions?
I'm gonna ask you, we're talking about it, it's probably in the communication that went out today, but just a lot of information. Are the resumes, cover letters, and then their answers to the questions, will they all be in one? Just kind of go in and out?
There'll be linked to that one document, I mean, you can all along. But if you, again, like we asked today, if you want hard copies of anything, just let me know and I'll get it.
Yeah, like I asked for, I'm a hard copy.
I will.
And I figured we'll wait until after tomorrow, once we have all the answers to the questions, and I'll share them with whoever does want hard copy.
Whether it's the spreadsheet that,
Yeah,
yeah, and they just link now, you click on it. and-
So, and since the newest thing coming to you is the questions, there's a separate link just for that, but it's all organized in one folder, but you can go to that spreadsheet.
As much as I am a technology person, I too, every system I wear hard copies. So how will we collect them from you?
I can deliver.
Yeah. Well, and even, I don't mind helping you if you want to, I can even pick them up. I mean, everybody's welcome.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
You're not allowed to leave from your desk, Mike.
Looks like mine's like a little walk around.
The killer's trip to
Okay,
break.
but thank you. Thank you for everyone in the community for the interest. We appreciate it. Lastly, I wanted to just say a word about the passing of Dennis Keller, who was a longtime Haddonfield resident. He was very active in our community, having served on many committees and in many organizations, including the Board of Ed from 2008 to 2015. And he's also noted as having reestablished the Haddonfield Educational Trust, where he served as president and treasurer. So we're very grateful for his dedication to the community, and we send our condolences to his family and friends.
very good.
Okay, we're now going to open up for public comment. We are going back to having 2 open public comment sessions. So this one will be for agenda items. I don't think there's many people watching, but when we say agenda items, it's anything that is on the agenda that we're discussing already within the meeting. And at the end of the meeting, after we talk about the agenda, we'll open up again for non-agenda items. And just so the board and the public is aware, Linda and I and Chuck drafted like an open public comment statement we're going to read because Adam is better speaking off the cuff than I am. So I figured this might be better to keep it straight. Although I will revise it to fit in where people can go to see the responses. We will now begin the open public comment session. Members of the community are invited to speak for no more than 3 minutes about agenda items at this time. Non-agenda comments will be taken at the end of the meeting and follow the same guidelines. If your 3 minutes is up, we invite you to get back in line if you'd like to make additional comments. This is an opportunity for the board to listen, but not debate issues or enter into a question and answer period. Please be aware that not all issues brought up before a board meeting will be resolved that evening. We ask you state your name and the name of your street so that a designee can get back to you with a response if warranted. While public education can be an emotional issue, we strive to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Public meetings are recorded and televised, and students often participate in the meetings. As such, citizens are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility.
So does he have to switch over the little sign that says?
I don't
Oh,
think
we're
they
gonna
can call it
do
anymore, so.
All right.
So I am moving along. Okay, so,
Nobody writes.
We know we don't.
okay, so there's, for those watching, we don't really have an audience tonight. So we will move on to the items for, Board of Education approval. So what I was thinking, so I can get your way in now, I was just going to say, are there any discussion for items under 8 governance? In which case you can bring it up rather than reading every item under there. Any objections to that?
So I don't want to make you uncomfortable. I sometimes think, and I won't push back if nobody else agrees, but if you read it, sometimes it's helpful for people watching to know what we're talking about, or it gives me, if we don't move on too quickly, sometimes those categories are long. I have to read them to say, what did I want to ask about again? But, you know, I think it adds value, but if you want to skip it, it's not that big a deal either. You can try.
Do you mean in the work session or just in general?
Well, in the work session, but and I could read it on the voting session. I was just thinking, because usually people go through the agenda, like I write down 8C and then my comment. So I would just say 8C rather than read through them, but if it's valuable I'll try not, and then if it doesn't go well, let me know, and we can go back to reading. Okay. All right, any discussion for items under governance?
I have a quick question. So I'm on the policy committee and I couldn't make the last meeting. And I'm completely fine with the changes made to F1, policy 5M1, dress and grooming. I was just curious, I meant to bring this up after the very first meeting when we reviewed it. We removed the one section that, I gotta find it, that removed profanity on clothing. And I just want to point it, like, if you're all comfortable with it, I'll go with it, but are you comfortable that the new language doesn't give anybody anything to argue over this policy about related to profanity, or just, it mentions in there that they shall have wholesome attitudes towards neatness, cleanliness, propriety, modesty, and good sense. Maybe that covers it. I thought sometimes the policies give us a little bit of I don't know, if you don't think that weakens.
So it's in the regulation,
Yeah.
so the policy has been simplified
The regulation.
and it's kind of broad, but the regulation has very specific things listed underneath.
I remember
including
reading that for the first one, it's just not on here.
One in each speech.
Yeah.
And it fits the student handbooks of the HMS and HMHS now, which also lists the things you can't do. Or in proud parent moment, my son went to the first day of school in a Guinness t-shirt.
So bad.
Sorry, guys.
And he's on the decision.
Yeah, but
And sometimes that happens. You know?
it was a green
Except
shirt with
themselves.
writing.
Okay, I'm good.
All right, moving on, any discussion on curriculum and special education? Okay, any discussion on personnel? Any discussion on the approval of business and finance recommendation? Okay, any discussion on the approval of the minutes?
Other than my recommendation, which can be taken or leave it, I just thought from a record keeping standpoint, the context is separated between the question and the answer and the other things that were discussed that night. If it weren't like, and it could even just be a link to the purpose. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that, especially because if anyone's checking our minutes, we can link them to the page and they can find the answers.
They're already getting processed, it's just a matter of copying and pasting them in the proper format, so I think it's worthwhile.
Hopefully they get more traction than the board meeting bulletin. that average 3 hits per month.
Since we're not voting, can I bring up a question not related to the agenda real quick?
Sure, do you want me to say we're in items for future consideration by the board?
Okay. I'm just curious, I know that we talked about the, construction delays that were happening with the, I don't even know what you call it, the courtyard outside the cafeteria that we walked by here. I'm just curious, nothing urgent or anything, just, are there any updates and like when you think that that'll happen? Any more, I honestly don't know a lot of details about why it was delayed other than construction prices increasing and stuff.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I was just saying, besides, it's lead times on items, things at the very beginning of the project that were delayed, administrative reasons. But also a lot of unforeseen things that took place, especially where you now see the finished seating as soon as directly below where you're seeing, where the breezeway is. Those are the main reasons. They're the main reasons of why we are here to, still in the middle of the project, and this was supposed to be done before the start of September. So yeah.
As I understand, where they are right now goes pretty quickly. So most of the rest of the progress is going to be concrete for the rest of the area, which they'll do that in sections. That's just a matter of early October. That's a couple of weeks away, but we're expecting that done. So it should go pretty quickly right now, yes.
And will they be working on it during school hours or is it?
They'll be doing stuff like pouring concrete during school hours, but not cutting rebar and very loud stuff. So it'll be very selective what they do. And if they have to do stuff like cutting rebar that is loud, they'll take it out and do it down the end by the circles. So it's not everything.
I'm glad it'll be done by October. I was worried that winter can sneak up quickly when the ground's frozen.
We're hoping for October. We'll rain like today would have been a day where they've been pouring it toward the end of the week. Today would have been a day where they might have been pouring concrete, and obviously they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So if the weather holds up, we're hoping it moves quickly.
So we're not waiting on any change of prices or anything.
Oh, no, it's nothing with prices, it's just obtaining things. So they're working on getting the footings poured for the shade structures that will go up to, that's happening. But also keep in mind, there's some standardized testing going on here
Right. So
next
that's
week.
the
So
reason, right.
they've been told there won't be anything going on construction wise, just to completely assure that nothing will interrupt construction.
I have an item for future consideration. And another update from the borough about the condition of the buildings we're gonna take. We're in essence in an agreement of sale with the borough of Haddonfield for buildings and land.
It's deteriorating.
And I can say, we're holding up our end of the bargain. I was just down at Radnor Field. The field crews, the maintenance department of the school district has maintained the fields, the drainways, the pathways, have done concrete repairs, have done fence repairs, to be able to turn over land in good working order to the borough of Haddonfield. And God damn it, they're not returning the favor. And it's not a favor. We have plans for the buildings that are going to hell. We had possibilities for a building that went up in smoke. And the buildings that we must care for because they're historic structures are not being maintained even a little bit. It's outrageous, and it's outrageous that it's taken so long to consummate this. You know what's the safest thing to maintain a building? Occupying it. And we would occupy those buildings in a minute. And now we can't, because we'll have to do repairs. We have to budget for the repairs, we have to spend public money for the repairs. We have to probably employ grant writers to try to tap into maintenance of historic structures, which, you know, the costs are never cheap for that kind of stuff. And it's way beyond too long, too ridiculous, and they should just come clean about what the delay is, because it's outrageous what the delay is. And it's just costing the town money, our money. Money that could go into instruction instead has to go into construction. And it's a crime.
Dave, I agree. What can we do? What are the next steps?
What can we do? We could do what the lawyer and liar did. Eat it. That's all we can do. Because we still need the land, we still want the land. It's still a valuable piece for future generations of Haddonfield to have contiguous property to the high school. So we just have to eat it until they get off their ass and get it done.
So and I agree with you, it's been too long. And we're being told, right, that there's a hold up in Ukraine, but this has been months and months and months. Do we have, like, I'm not privy to any of that. Are we privy to any of that? What's that? Well, if it's a two-way exchange, why do we not have some kind of, communication, right? I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm thinking like generally when you're doing an exchange, both parties would have access to whatever it is that's holding this up.
They would only exchange the borough. So it's up to the borough to communicate. So I mean, I'm.
And to be kind, that's why I'm putting it as an item for future consideration, so those answers could be had.
I mean,
Okay.
maybe one of
I'll
the
have-
commissioners could come
We'll
in and
reach
talk.
out. There was some progress apparently this last week. And we'll be back next week. I'll be able to report out on much more detail on it.
If the holdup is procedural, understandable. If the holdup is budget, unconscionable.
But maybe the commissioner should also put some pressure, not that they can put pressure on Trenton, but the squeaky wheel sometimes gets the grease, and maybe they ought to make some phone calls every 2 weeks to see how it's progressing. If they're not already.
Anything else? All right, a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
I'll second.
Heather and Dee.
Opened it, we closed it.